Okay, so this video is going to continue section 2.1. The previous one you watched talked about the standard form of a quadratic. And remember, the standard form of a quadratic should look like this. Okay. And this video is going to talk about what do you do if you have something that is not in this form, because we need to be able to get it to that form so that then we can tell some things about it. So you need to keep in mind, if you look at this, I have some very important things. I have a perfect square right here because it's x minus h squared. And then I also have just a single number added on at the end, and maybe I have a. Sometimes there is no a in front of the equation, okay? So I'm just going to go through an example with you. We're going to do something called completing the square. Okay, so we're going to do something called completing the square in order to get an equation that isn't in this form, okay? So let's say I give you the equation f of x equals 2x squared plus 8x plus 7. Clearly this is not in standard form. If you look at this, there's not supposed to be two x terms written out like that. We only have one x term, and then yes, we have the number added on at the end. So we want to be sure that we're keeping that, okay? So first thing we want to do is recognize that this 2x squared and this 8x have a like term, okay? This 7 would not be included in that like term. So the first thing I want to do is I want to group my first two terms. Okay, so all I did was write something with parentheses. We know if you look back up at standard form, you need something with parentheses, and you need a number added on at the end. So I've made some progress, except for this should be x minus something squared, and that's not currently what we have. So here, I think I could take care of my a by factoring out of 2. So I'm going to have 2x squared plus, oh, and I wrote 4 here. That's supposed to be an 8. I got ahead of myself. I was taking out the 2 already. Plus 4x plus 7. So I'm making even more progress if you look back up at the equation of standard form, because now I have my a and I have my k, and now I need to make this just x either plus or minus something squared. So how do I know what will make this a perfect square? Okay. Typically this is a, b, and then we would have c. So we need to do b divided by 2 squared, and that will tell me what I need to add and subtract, because if I add 4 and then subtract 4, I've really just added 0. So if I look at this problem, here's my b term. This is going to be the one you're concerned about when you're doing these problems. So it's a 4. So I'm going to do 4 divided by 2, which is 2, squared, which happens to be 4. That will not be the case in every single one of these problems. So I know in order to make this inside of my parentheses a perfect square, I need to add 4 to it. Okay? So it's going to look like this. 2x squared plus 4x plus 4, and then I need to subtract 4, and then I still have my plus 7 on the end. So this is a process called completing the square. We're trying to make these parentheses a perfect square. So remember, that means that I have two factors that are the exact same. Now, to have two factors that are the exact same, I need a trinomial, and there are 4 terms in here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take out this last term, this subtracted term. Okay, so it's going to look like this, and this is very important. You have to be careful here. 2x squared plus 4x plus 4 minus, now notice up here wasn't that negative 4 being multiplied by 2, so we still have to keep that. Okay, so we're getting closer. Now, x squared plus 4x plus 4. So I need factors of 4 that also add to get 4. So I'm hoping you recognize that that will factor to x plus 2 and x plus 2. Now let's go ahead and combine these. We've got 2 times 4, which makes negative 8, plus 7. So that last part is going to be minus 1. Okay, this is a perfect square, so I can go ahead and write this as 2x plus 2 squared minus 1. And there is my same equation from up above in standard form. Because I have my A, my H, and my K. Okay. I would say this will be the step that most people will miss because they will forget to take the 2, which was in front of my original parentheses, and multiply it out. Now, if you remember back to the previous video, once I have something in standard form, we have 4 questions that you should be able to answer about these graphs. Remember, number 1 is the vertex. Okay, number 2 is the axis of symmetry. Number 3 is whether it opens up or down. And number 4 is normal, narrow, or wider. Okay, so let's look at this equation here. Vertex. Remember, that comes from these 2 pieces of information. But standard form says that this needs to be x minus. Okay, so we should know that our vertex is now negative 2, negative 1. Our axis of symmetry is going to be x equals negative 2. A is positive, so we should know that this opens up. And 4, we also look at A again. So remember, numbers 3 and 4 both come from A. Normal, narrow, or wider. Well, this is not a 1, so we know it's not normal. Narrow or wider. If you need to, look back at your notes, but wider is caused by a number between 0 and 1. So you should recognize that this is going to be a parabola that is narrow. Okay. I'm going to give you one more example and get you started, and I want you to come to class and see if you can have this problem finished. So I will help you start. So I'm going to give you the equation, and I want you to write it in standard form. So I will get you started. Negative x squared plus 6x minus 8. Remember, my goal is to write this in standard form, so I need parentheses that are a perfect square and something added at the end. So I will help get you started. First thing you need to do is group your first 2 terms together. That starts getting you your parentheses. Now, I want to look at what these have in common. And I know I want this to be a positive x in here. So I'm going to take out negative 1 from both those terms. Okay, now if you remember, I need to look at this middle term because that's going to tell me what I need to add and what I need to subtract to make this a perfect square. So remember, it should be b, which is negative 6 divided by 2 squared. So that's negative 6 divided by 2 is negative 3 squared is 9. So I know to those parentheses I need to add and I also need to subtract 9. Okay, and I changed my mind. I'm just going to go ahead and finish this one with you. Okay, so now remember, I only want 3 terms in this parentheses, and then I know it's a perfect square trinomial. So I'm going to take that subtracted term out. Minus, now here, this is a negative 1 times my 9 minus 8. So here, let's look inside this parentheses. X squared minus 6x plus 9. So I need factors of 9 that are going to get me a negative 6. Remember, they should be the exact same factor. So I should recognize that that middle factors to x minus 3. Then I go ahead and simplify this right here. So we've got negative times negative 1 times 9. So that's positive 9 minus 8. That should simplify to plus 1. I'm getting closer. Here's my number added at the end. Here's my a. I need to write this so it is a perfect square. So there would be my g of x written in standard form. Now see if you can answer our 4 questions looking at our new standard form. So now might be a good time where you pause the video and you try this. The vertex should be at 3, 1. The axis of symmetry should be at x equals 3. This should open down, and it should be normal width. Okay, so this is a video on completing the square in order to get an equation into standard form. We will discuss maybe another example in class tomorrow. Be sure to ask questions if you have them. This is something that you need to be able to do.